WIIN in Blockchain Inclusive Innovation webinar. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Camille Jones. I'm one of the board members here at WIIN, and we're very excited to have you here. Just to kick it off very quickly, just to give you a run of our event today, we'll have a brief introduction of WIIN and our board members, and we'll go through a brief poll. And then we have a really nice discussion on the evolution of blockchain for impact given by Catherine Foster, one of our panelists. And then we'll have a discussion, a very interesting and dynamic discussion with our esteemed panelists. And then we'll have a Q&A. And we encourage you to go through and address your questions in the chat. And if you feel like you want to direct one of the questions to your panelists, please add their name to the panel, to the question. And then at the end, we'll have a short time to have an open discussion where we can network into our breakout rooms. I'll pass it on to Ranjini, our moderator for today.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's event. My name is Ranjini Sridhar, and I'm co-founder of the DC-based Women Impact Investing Network. I'm also founder of ImpactCred. ImpactCred is a fintech marketplace leveraging blockchain, seeking to more efficiently connect impact investors with social enterprises working on the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm so happy to be able to moderate today's event with our stellar panel. I'll pass it back to you, Camille.
Thank you, Ranjini. Again, my name is Camille Jones. I'm a product manager at Bloomberg Industry Group. I'm also the co-founder of Carry Capacity, an organization that helps Caribbean entrepreneurs gain access to impact investment and resources, really focus on climate innovation. And I'm very excited to be here. Over to you, Laura.
Thanks, Camille. My name is Laura Hill. I head operations at FFI PBC, a public benefit corporation in the home shared equity space. And I'm really excited about this event. And thanks to the panel and all the attendees.
Great. I can kick this off. Do we have Jessel? Yeah, we'll kick it to you, Jessel. We want to invite Jessel to talk a little bit about our network. She's currently the co-chair of WIIN. Hi, Jessel. Great to see you.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jessel Amin, and I'm a co-chair of the Women Impact Investing Network. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our kickoff event for 2022, Blockchain for Inclusive Innovation. For those of you who are new to our community, the Women Impact Investing Network is a DC-based network which fosters collaboration, leadership, and knowledge-building opportunities in the impact investing sector for women working across a diverse spectrum of focus areas and organization. Our network has a robust membership of over 1,100 members across 350 organizations. And while we enjoy the sort of increased flexibility and networking opportunities this virtual environment has afforded us, we are very much looking forward to resuming in-person gatherings in 2022. And so to foster some enhanced connection today, please introduce yourself in the chat when you have a moment. And please continue to stay engaged with our content through our LinkedIn group, our email distribution, and our website. I do also want to note that WIIN is a volunteer-led organization, and the programming we bring you would not be possible without the sort of unwavering and dedication and commitment of our board and our advisory. So thank you for the team, and back to our hosts, Camille, Laura, and Ranjini.
Great. Thank you so much, Jessel. I also want to give a shout out to our partner for this event, the Digital Economist. The Digital Economist is a global impact ecosystem focused on building products, insights, services, and programs towards human and planetary outcomes. It's a fantastic organization, and I really encourage you all to learn more at thedigitaleconomist.com. And I'll hand it over to Laura.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ranjini. We're going to kick us out. This is very much our WIIN tradition with some polling questions that just help us understand where we are with knowledge level, interest, etc. So it's 3 simple questions. I'm going to launch the first one. I think you're able to see now on your screen. So how knowledgeable are you of blockchain and crypto business models? Still, I think we're all fairly new to this. So we have some novice, intermediate, and expert levels. Feel free to position yourself where you think you belong. I'm confident, and after today, we'll have a much enhanced understanding of blockchain. Okay, wonderful. I'm gonna end the poll now and share the results with you. As you can see, this is a pretty, a crowd that would define itself as new to the topic, which is perfect. And there's some intermediate, no experts, except for the panel. So the panelists probably didn't answer the poll, but they would definitely qualify as experts. Okay, stop sharing, wonderful. Okay, and now we're gonna go to our second poll. And this helps us understand how your experience would be beneficial to you, what makes this event valuable to you. Maybe you intended to deepen in your understanding, maybe you just want to grow your network, or you have some Web3 ideas or something else. Okay, we'll wait 30 seconds more. I can see that most of you are making up your mind, and I think everybody here is pretty much driven by an appetite for knowledge. I'm going to share the results. So yeah, almost 3/4 of us are here because we really want to understand how this technology is and the great future that can bring us. Okay, so we're going to stop sharing and we're going to go to our third and last question. And this is about your interests. It's about the things that, you know, when you hear blockchain and crypto, what makes you excited, right? And is it perhaps like investing in startups? Is the social impact applications? Is just to understand like trends and fundamentals? So what are you most interested in? Wonderful. I can see that most of you have made up your mind. Okay, a few more seconds. There you go. I'm going to end the poll now and share the results. So, okay, true to the WIIN core group of participants, we're here to understand majorly how blockchain can apply to social impact aspects. And we're here also to understand the fundamentals because they will help us eventually dive deeper into our core expertise. Thank you so much. Stop sharing the results now and pass it on to you, Ranjani. There you go. Perfect.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura, for that. And so I think now we'll go into just learning a little bit more about our panelists. So I invite Camille to kind of give us those introductions, and then I'll kick off the panel.
Great, thank you, Ranjani. First, we have one of our panelists, Shaylee Aldinafi. She's the Director of Strategic Accounts at Consensus. Shaylee works on central bank digital currency, digital asset issuance platforms, and blockchain-based products for trade and commerce globally. Thank you so much, Shaylee, for joining us. Our next panelist is Catherine. Catherine is going to be working on, sorry. Sorry.
I can jump in, Camille, no worries, because I think we're having some just tech, we're all kind of going smoothly with this new Zoom world that we're still in. Catherine is a strategic advisor at the Digital Economist and the Open Earth Foundation. She is a veteran in leveraging blockchain across multilaterals, and specifically with a view towards leveraging blockchain for climate change use cases. We're really excited to have her And she's sitting at the base of the Alps. Is that right, Catherine? I was super excited that you could still make it. And the technology works, so that's great. And then we have Kristen Spradley from the Stellar Foundation, Development Foundation. She's Senior Legal Director there and works closely with the whole Stellar team with a focus on financial inclusion and real-world use cases for blockchain. Great. I'm going to jump in. We have a super packed panel, as you guys, can imagine. We have, we want to really take advantage of these experts to get into the conversation. I'm just going to jump through a couple of remarks here just to set the stage and then hand it over to Catherine. So delighted again to welcome Shaili, Kristen, and Catherine to the panel. We are in for a great discussion because they have been leading the way with the innovative and thoughtful use of blockchain, but also because our panelists are incredibly passionate about sharing their knowledge. According to Tech Jury, blockchain market size is poised to grow at a rate of over 70% over the next 3 years. Crypto assets have grown to over 2 trillion in assets in less than 15 years, representing approximately 1% of global equity markets. Just in January, IMF declared that crypto is no longer a fringe asset, something most of us kind of thought would be the case. Unlike traditional assets, which represent one sector or commodity, such as an equity holding or gold, the blockchain market is set to capture the growth of its adoption across all sectors. Although rapidly growing, I have this chart really as just one way to say that blockchain technology is still very much in the early stages of its technology life cycle. Similar to the disruptive potential of the internet and the World Wide Web over the last 30 plus years, blockchain offers yet another dramatically different way to organize, store, and power the world's data and transactions. For this reason, it's a fantastic time to jump in, as it offers women an incredible potential for wealth generation, either as investors or founders to support and define new business models, and gives us the ability to leverage blockchain to be relevant to the challenges we see around us. Nevertheless, key questions remain about when blockchain is appropriate versus not, how to make blockchain, the use of blockchain sustainable and inclusive, and when and how to create an enabling policy and regulatory environment to be able to actually leverage technology at scale. The panel will kick off with Catherine, who will provide a brief overview of blockchain technology as it's been leveraged for social impact to date, and provide a number of use cases to wrap around any ambiguity. And then I really look forward to jumping into the discussion with Shaili, Kristen, and Catherine, who will be able to provide concrete examples of the potential of this emerging technology. As a side note, we'll try our best to make the breakout rooms happen, but we'll play that portion by ear depending on audience questions. I'll now hand off to Catherine to help set the stage for our discussion.
Thank you so much. And wonderful to be here. I think the last time I saw many of you was in my living room in Washington, D.C., but I'm now based in Switzerland. So great to see everyone. I just wanted to start with a light overview of the evolution of blockchain from its early days to the fast emerging business models, including non-fungible tokens and distributed autonomous organizations, or DAOs. But I think it's first important to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals and the climate agenda, because these serve as sort of that universal framework for impact related to inclusive innovation, which has been my professional focus for 30 plus years. Most people use 2015 as the starting reference year, as this was the pivotal launch of the new Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement on climate change. And both set out frameworks for national goals and targets for 2030 and for a sustainable and net zero emission world by 2050. The next slide, please. However, the UN and international community, I think we can move to the next slide. Yeah, great. Just keep pressing, there we go. The UN and international community have been working on the climate and sustainability agenda for over 30 years already, with a series of international agreements, goals, and targets. And we've had key challenges in building out the solutions to deliver on these. And speaking from hands-on experience, I can attest to the silos and replication, to the big infrastructure gaps, to the monitoring, reporting, and verification gaps, the data gaps, the credibility issues, some fraud issues, efficiency challenges, and misaligned incentives. So basically what we've been left with was a legacy of fragmented solutions. And this is my frame of reference for the work I do. I think of examples of energy, agricultural, financial inclusion, and the myriad of organizations and solutions, each with its own limited but costly and porous infrastructure. These are the key transformation gaps, but it's been about tech readiness, data governance as the key hurdles. On the next slide, we can talk about the fact that these are then presented as the market opportunity for emerging technology based on World Bank and UN reports. And so what's interesting is that just as the Sustainable Development Goals and new climate frameworks were released in 2015, technology began to scale and integrate and to converge under two very important and related dialogues of revolution. You can skip through there. So this is, again, the transformation gaps. And on the next slide, what we see is, and you can skip through to the end, this dialogue of revolution that would help us overcome and have this integrated earth. On the next slide. And the promise to overcome those silos and leapfrog development, the infrastructure to increase efficiency, democratize funding, and stamp out the fraud and corruption and restore trust in our systems, both small and large, as well as meaningful, accurate, and verified data to underpin impact measurements for finance and investments. And so why blockchain then? What was so exciting about blockchain was about overcoming those gaps through this approach to centralized systems. So blockchain is almost like an analogy for the actual approach of the systems that we had in place. Centralized systems are systems based on a central server. And here we're talking about the blockchain technology, how it's overcoming the technology approach that we've had. A central transaction provider and database has really been the way that each organization has had to overcome whatever solution they're providing, or to present every solution they're providing. It's easy to manage, to control, to address privacy, but very vulnerable in terms of security and centralized failures. It's also difficult to scale and to connect. And then decentralized systems, this is peer-to-peer architecture. There's no central node, no central entity. The system is an aggregation of individual nodes, and these could be computers or servers. And one central node failure will not cause the whole system to fail, and not everything is stored in one central location. Vertical scaling is possible, but there's no regulatory oversight as well, but that's another issue. And then a distributed system, of which a decentralized system is more or less a subset of, is every node makes its own decision. Behavior of the system is the aggregate of the decisions of the individual nodes. And for our purposes, we're talking about blockchain as both decentralized and distributed. I don't want to get into a really philosophical discussion here about the intent of distributed versus decentralized, because blockchain purists go into that. But for us, it's about the applicability for impact. And on the next slide, I just want to demonstrate how information is stored or shared across a blockchain system. So each node holds a list of records, blocks, and updates these as new data or transactions occur nearly simultaneously. So you couldn't go in and hack all of those at the same time, but that's not the only issue. When any transaction occurs, data is added to the block, and all of the different computers using the blockchain update simultaneously. Blocks and code which are added to each block in a chain across the ledger, hence blockchain. And this way, every node has that updated secure copy of the ledger, and everyone has permission, can use it. This increases trust, security, transparency, and the traceability of data and transactions shared across a network. It delivers cost savings with new efficiencies. All of these attributes are integrally important when it comes to climate and SDGs and filling those solution gaps that we talked about. So for example, rather than having to build huge energy infrastructure in a grid, you could build micro peer-to-peer solar energy with reduced costs, community ownership, and other advantages. And that information would be shared within this blockchain, and smart contracts are layered up. But we'll go on from here. Because blockchain's gone through, this is the use cases, blockchain basics. So these were some of the early use cases where we had value chain, supply chain traceability. You had the United Nations World Food Program with iris scanning for identity and food vouchers. And you had Everledger Diamond, which is one of the most famous ones and one that was very close to my heart. But how does that fit in with the crypto and blockchain ecosystem? On the next slide, hopefully it'll work. And you can just, actually, I think we've missed the integrated technologies slide, but basically there's a slide that talks about the evolution of blockchain basics, where we've gone from cryptocurrencies in this peer-to-peer, Camille, if you can maybe find that one that we are having trouble with, I think it was slide 18. We have cryptocurrencies, peer-to-peer, yeah, that one. No link, so peer-to-peer cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, and other coins that sort of emerged in the early days. They had no real link to climate and SDGs unless there was some sort of transaction. And then we had a detour into initial coin offerings, which basically were used as a fundraising based on a white paper, but there was regulatory clampdown and a high failure rate. So we've largely reduced the noise around that. And instead, what we've seen as the natural progression into the tokenization of other assets, not just the diamonds and identity or food vouchers, but property, agriculture, carbon through key data points. For example, you can scan and thumbprint the diamond for certification or an iris for identity. You can use satellite imagery on forestry. All of this can be layered through smart contracts to be able to transact on these assets and flow data through value chains for different purposes. And the underlying blockchain technologies have evolved to support a wide range of use cases with those new layers and applications that can be built on top of the blockchain system. And for the impact space, the real potential was seen to use blockchain to address those issues I mentioned, the transparency, the gaps, the efficiency, the costs, because of the core attributes. And that next slide, we talk about the core assets. Next slide, Camille. And the one after. Next one. Yeah. The blockchain basics. And if we just think of it as accessibility, security, transparency, which does not necessarily mean visibility, these are the core attributes that we're talking about. And what we saw is blockchain use cases on the next slide that just leaped off the page in 2017 and 18. Addressing those key gaps and inefficiencies in incumbent solutions and ecosystem capacities. And moreover, those early use cases that were successful, it was part and due to inclusive innovation, consortia building and collaboration. The underlying emerging technologies have evolved, and those use cases have also evolved to more integrated solutions on the next slide, where we see not only those value chains and single use cases, but robust models with integration, trusted data and collaboration, network of oracles and entities that enable blockchain to absorb and interact with real world data. So you can actually say, this solar farm is producing this amount of energy and therefore reducing GHGs, and we can transact on all of this. So this is taking over and matching and incorporating incumbent solutions as well as new ecosystem capacities. I know I'm a little bit over time. I'll just take one more minute to say, so that's where we're going on the next slide, the blockchain basic slide, to new generation blockchain and the creator economy. So we've gone from blockchain 3.0 to next generation with non-fungible tokens, distributed autonomous organizations, Web3. There's new applications, new financial layers, new uses, community and missions that are driven, basically. But there's also new risks with these. And let's try the next slide. So this is the burgeoning DAO landscape. It's probably already out of date. DAOs are software-enabled organizations that allow anyone with an idea to coordinate, pool funds, set goals, and create tokens that represent their share within the organization and share it in value creation when goals are achieved. DAOs are purely internet native organizations that lack a central leadership and are instead operated through on-chain rules solidified through those smart contracts. And this is the part where blockchain tokens step in and act as governance tokens that allow holders to partake in the major decisions. There's no hierarchy, it's fairly transparent, it's open access, and there's potential for democratic changes to happen, for investors to change the rules. So this is just a taste of where we're going. And of course, there are issues around this. In the next slide, we talk about the energy and climate impact, depending on the underlying consensus mechanisms. But I don't want to divert our discussion too much on this because we're working on it. And the last slide, this is about where do we go in terms of impact investing and inclusive impact. So it's really important to understand that, there's a way to invest in blockchain for climate initiatives. Those use cases that I talked about that are sort of blockchain 2 and 3.0, they're still doing funding rounds. Then we have investing in blockchain for climate initiatives via tokens and cryptocurrencies. You also have investing in those platforms, corporate platforms, those integrated platforms as well. And you can have now investing via cryptocurrencies into DAOs and DeFi's and NFT-based solutions. And of course, we always have to do our due diligence. And that includes the same old things that you would do with other organizations. Who's behind it? What are their vision? What's their team like? What is the regulatory space, etc. So I'll stop there because I want to hear from the experts on the panel and talk about other solutions. I see one question. MRV is monitoring, reporting, verification. It's all about the data that is being added in and layered up for that impact space. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was fantastic, Catherine. It's incredible how much you have just kind of, in your mind, you're able to kind of just kind of distill the sort of the movement and the chronology really of blockchain for impact over the last 10 or so years. So we'll jump in. I thought actually we'll do like a rapid fire with all the panelists. I just want to get everybody's voice in here, make it super quick with your answers, and then we'll get into sort of the more serious conversation. So why don't I start with you, Shaili? What is the most common, I guess I'll have all of you answer these questions. What is the most common myth or question you get about blockchain technology? So we'll go Shaili, Kristen, Catherine, in that order.
Common myth that it's just a scam, that it's not scaling. It's just a fad. And this is not true. As Catherine mentioned, it's a $2 trillion market cap today. About 300 million people using crypto or holding crypto or trading it. And it's growing by the day very rapidly. And there are a lot of different, it's not just about Bitcoin and Ethereum anymore. It's about, there are so many Ethereum layer 2s that I work with, and layer 1s like Solana coming out. It's just fantastic to watch the innovation and rapid pace of growth in the space.
Right. Okay, we'll go to you, Kristen.
Sure. So I think one of the big misconceptions is that you need a deep technical knowledge in order to be able to get involved in blockchain. And I would say personally, I found that to not be true. I don't come from a technology background. I'm a lawyer by training. But also, I think it's actually really important to bring non-technologists, non-native technologists into the system, because I think that's how we're going to get more simplified, more accessible, and more intuitive products and services and offerings, is when you have the non-native technologists coming in and saying, here's what I would need in order to be able to work in this program and with this technology.
Great. And then we'll go to you, Catherine.
I think I've said so much, but yeah, first I would say that the myth about that you have to be active in the crypto space in order to be an investor in blockchain for impact. And then the second, I think, is the myth, the confusion around the climate and energy impact about blockchain. I think we're coming to the other side of that, thankfully, and it's largely to the great work of those doing the layered solutions, etc. So I think that's something that we don't have to dive too deep into, but understand that it's in transition.
Right. And I think we'll get into some of the layers between the work that all of you are doing. So that's fun that you mentioned that. All right. So what's in your crypto wallet? Like, what are 1 or 2 coins that you hold? We'll go to you, Shaili.
Bear with me, I'm on my phone for this. So I hold ETH, ETC, AVAX, SOL, and BTC. I think MAT as well, and some. I think some. We just invested in some metaverse tokens, my family as well, but I can't remember those off the top of my head.
Nice, thanks for sharing. We'll go to you, Kristen.
Sure. So I think, if anybody knows the risk averse levels of lawyers, this won't come as a surprise, but my only holdings are, I have a USDC high yield account. So I stick with the stable coins. I'm a stable coin girl.
Nice. I was going to say hi-fi up top. Great. We'll go to you, Catherine.
I'm in a bit of a pickle because I've moved twice, and in both times the first time I've lost my USB back in 2015, and then this time moving back from Washington, my account got locked in because my phone number changed. So I had some Bitcoin and some ETH on that, but I honestly don't know if I'll ever see it again.
Got it.
I also hold some NFTs that I've been garnering through some of the impact work there.
Neat. No, we'd love to know how one gets into sort of investing in whether it's NFTs or I think Shaili mentioned the metaverse tokens. That's very cool. Great. Okay, so let's jump in. So I guess, Shaili, let me start with you. Could you share a bit about your work at Consensus and sort of how the space has evolved while you've been there, and what kinds of innovations you're interested in right now?
Sure. So I'm a director of strategic sales and accounts at Consensus, and I've been here for over 3 years. I've been in the crypto space since 2017. Before that, I worked on USAID funded projects for 10 years and just government consulting before that. So I made my way from digital development, financial inclusion, and mobile money into like crypto and the metaverse. Consensus is a blockchain infrastructure company where we provide products and services that power the Ethereum ecosystem. So MetaMask is one of our more popular products, which is a wallet, and that has about a little over 30 million monthly active users today. And mainly I work on enterprise solutions as well as like crypto native tooling and solutions. So for example, anything from central bank digital currencies, where I worked with Visa to launch a retail payment module for CBDCs, just a sandbox type of environment for governments to begin experimenting with the technology and seeing how it has evolved. And kind of learning about the space via CBDCs, as well as NFTs and DAO tooling. So I'm in deep here, but still I feel new in the space. And in the early days, I also supported consortia governance. For example, with the UN World Food Program's Building Blocks platform, I helped with the governance framework of bringing various groups together to be a part of that consortium. So and the most interesting things today that I'm seeing and working on are, I think from an infrastructure perspective, roll-ups, layer twos, and the privacy preserving compliance solutions for DeFi. So I'll just stop talking there.
Wow, great. Yeah, and hopefully we'll get into especially the NFT and DAO space a little bit later. I'll go to you, Kristen. Could you share a bit more also, along those lines with the work you're leading at Stellar, and love to hear like what's the most exciting part of this technology for you in terms of inclusion and impact?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me. I work for the Stellar Development Foundation, which it was founded to support the development and the growth of the open source decentralized Stellar blockchain network. And our mission is really all about creating equitable access to the global financial system. So in my particular role, I'm the senior legal director. So I really work right alongside the business teams, advising them on what I think are some of the most exciting and innovative legal issues in blockchain technology, digital assets, and for us, particularly global payments. So I handle, all types of commercial transactions, strategic partnerships, and all of our investment activities. One thing I think that's always excited me about Stellar in particular for this audience is we have a really strong female leadership team. We have a female CEO, a female head of engineering, as well as a female general counsel. So it's been a fantastic, very mission-driven organization to work for. And in terms of exciting aspects about the technology, Stellar was really designed and optimized. Different chains are optimized for sort of different use cases. And our use case is really all about fiat-backed asset issuance. And I think what's really exciting about it is that brings some real, like incredible real world utility that you don't often see in sort of the blockchain and crypto space. So, some of our big use cases are things that everybody's familiar with. It's cross-border payments, it's remittances, it's sending value using stable coins, it's storing value in the face of a volatile currency. And then what we really focus on is trying to make it really easy and seamless to move between fiat and digital assets and back again, so that you have this sort of anchored technology in the real world and with these real use cases. So I think that's truly very exciting, especially the ability for that to reach into unbanked and underserved communities, because remember, you're able to receive and send cross-border payments on networks like Stellar without requiring a bank account. And when about 2 billion people in the world don't have bank accounts, that's a really, really important and impactful use of that technology.
Wow, I did not realize that you don't need to have a bank account. That actually makes sense because it's basically all mobile device enabled. Right, that makes total sense. Great. And then we'll jump to Catherine to kind of close out the introductions. Catherine, you're doing some really interesting work as a strategic advisor at the Digital Economist and the Open Earth Foundation as well. We'd love to learn about that. And then how is the climate, pun intended, to embrace blockchain across large global organizations?
Absolutely. And, we all interface in some of these. So Open Earth Foundation, for example, has a Stellar grant, received a Stellar grant in its early days, which really helped us kickstart our climate accounting. So I think, to paraphrase this, I started in sort of traceability solutions, looking at bunker fuel, maritime fuel, at a very peak period of time where the sulfur cap was coming. So there was no way to prove compliance with a legal, a new law, a new rule. And then that sort of also emerged into that consortia building, which was so necessary because this had to be open. And that led also to the whole climate accounting approach, which is so challenging because we have national accounts and we have a voluntary market, and the big issues around that were double counting or traceability, having data. And then we just keep layering up in terms of the capacities and the integration of technologies and data. And here it's about consortia building and collaboration. And that's where I think the international organizations are really convening key stakeholders and actors. So with Open Earth Foundation and the Digital Economist, we're working on it, some really key collaborative initiatives. One is also that I have to do a shout out on is the UN UNFCCC new Global Innovation Hub, which is going to have some working groups and committees. And I see Catherine Atkin here. We're working on a pilot for Goyang City on city-based accounting, basically. And then we're doing one for Digital Minds Trust in British Columbia. And then on top of that, for the hub itself, we're creating a platform that's going to, through blockchain, that's going to help match out the capacities to identify needs with solutions. So not just a marketplace, but then using IoT, AI, IoT to really identify solution gaps and then put challenges out there to the international community and startup community saying, hey, do you have what we need in this area or for that group? So I'll just stop there because it just keeps building in terms of the capacities and the stakeholders involved.
Yeah, that's great perspective for the audience. And I also think you made a point earlier about how it's the convergence of technologies with AI, 5G, cloud computing, all of that sort of with blockchain that's really going to be able to, create some of these use cases. So that's really great to sort of see how that's playing out with your work. Great. So one thing I want to do is give all of you a chance just to, make any other important points before we go deeper into the conversation. So one thing I'd like to ask all of you is sort of going further into the conversation, like what do you think is really important for us all to know about sort of blockchain as a technology? So let's start with you, Shaili, and then we'll just go around.
So there is so much to know, but I would say, I think it's important for you to begin investing yourself and begin participating in DAOs. Don't just read about it, do it. Participate, get involved, because this is, your kids are going to be using this. It's going to be a part of our future, and it's better to get involved now and learn as the technology grows and evolves and be a part of that conversation, contribute your views to the conversation. We need more female voices and people identifying as female in the discussion and development of the tools and resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I would echo what Shaili just said. I think for a long time, folks, and still now you hear people talking about the promise of blockchain. And I would just say, I think the future is now, right? Like there are real use cases that are live today, that are being developed today, that are being launched today, that demonstrate how blockchain is something that can actually improve lives in the real world. And so I think, not thinking of it as this Twitter phenomenon that you follow along, but something that could really impact your daily life. I think that's the biggest point that I would make is like the future is now. And, to Shaili's point, like get involved, get interested and start to educate yourself so that you're riding that wave at the top and not sort of, in the crest.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll go to you, Catherine.
Absolutely. I would just amplify that and say it really is about identifying, your area of expertise is actually very useful in the space. So I come from that climate and SDG space where I got very frustrated, and that frustration turned into my biggest asset. And I think that that's the case. Everyone around this table right now has certain capacities to bring to the table. You don't have to be a tech expert. I'm not. And I still find the way to identify the right mix. It's about the consortium building. It's about the collaboration. Even in the not-for-profit space, it really is it's across every industry, every ecosystem. And I think we can address those gaps, the gender, geographic, generational, and groups of actors.
That's great. We should We should remember to use that. So you said it's gender, geographic, and generational. Yeah, makes sense. I was going to ask this later, but given that we're talking about this theme of how do you get involved and sort of really, jump into the blockchain space for the sort of folks that feel new, including all of us that sounds like we're saying. Maybe each of you could talk a little bit about sort of your top 1 or 2 resources or courses in terms of how to get involved with blockchain applications, both as an investor or as someone that's in the development social impact space. So again, let's reverse. So we'll start with, or actually I'll start with Shaili. That seems to work well, and then we'll go around.
Okay, great. So Consensus, sign up for the Consensus Signal newsletter. Follow MetaMask on Twitter, or just, other influential people within the crypto space on Twitter, I would say. Some newsletters that I read that are useful: Blockworks, Decrypt, CoinDesk, I think is good as well. And then we have a Coursera course called Blockchain Essentials by Consensus with a Y. And that'll give you a good overview of what is a smart contract, what is an NFT, things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And because the innovation is sort of like innovations are moving so quickly across different chains and the applications of it, is it the newsletters that you recommend is the best way to keep up? Like when you talk about public chains, or you talk about, I was a bit myself, would love to learn more.
Yeah, you have to kind of do everything. So I listen to podcasts. Bankless has a great podcast, but that's super deep in DeFi. So, there's Laura Shin's podcast, Unchained, which is a good one. And then, there are a number of podcasts you can listen to. I would say newsletters, Twitter, podcasts. You got to be in Discord. You got to get on the Discord and be a part of the DAOs and NFT communities and participate, because that is where all these the metaverse and the crypto folks are hanging out. And
yeah. That's super helpful. Great. We'll go to you, Kristen.
Yeah, so I would echo everything that Shaili just said. I think all of those are really great resources. In particular, I found the Unchained podcast to also be quite accessible if you're not super deep into the space. And CoinDesk provides you with a very sort of news-centric, news feed of what's happening in the space. Also, I would say for this community, one thing that's worth investigating is if you we call them layer ones, but if there's blockchains that you are familiar with or that you've interested in or you've heard their names, almost all of them have very robust investment arms. Some of them are structured as, nonprofit foundations that sort of rest and sit alongside the decentralized exchange. But if you're looking for investment opportunities or want to see where they're putting their money, I would say go look at some of these chains. Stellar is a great example, but, Ripple and Algorand and Solana and all of these other chains, they all have very robust different types of funds and are regularly making investments, whether they're debt investments, equity investments, a variety of different community, educational and technical resources. And then also many of these exchanges that work in the crypto space also offer learn and earn programs, where you can go take little technical classes on different chains or on different tokens. And as you complete the lesson, you get a little NFT badge, or you get a couple of the tokens issued back to you. It's usually less than $5 worth of the token or something, but a great way to just go and kind of, in a fun educational way, learn more about the tools and the tokens and the chains that you're interested in. So, we have an example of one like Stellar Quest Learn, and it's free, right? You just go and complete these different challenges. And as you're doing it, you're learning more about the way the technology works.
Right. Yeah, that's such a good reminder that it is accessible and it's out there. And you just got to find a little roadmap that works for you. Thank you. Catherine, I see you put a link in there. So maybe that's that's the source?
Just a few. I think I bow to the other two experts on learning about blockchain and crypto. I'm furiously writing those down myself. In terms of on the other side about learning how blockchain has and is and will be impacting on impact, I think even the usual suspects, the United Nations, the World Bank, and the Climate Change Coalition, which is an amalgamation. It's not terribly active right now, but we're going to be rebooting. It's an amalgamation of 300 organizations worldwide, just to get a taste of how and where it's being used, those legacy or the older solutions as well as the new ones, and including some of the impact area. And then on NFTs, I just wrote a piece for St. Gallen's blogs. There's some really good blogs and podcasts out there that don't hit the crypto theme, but are about impact and blockchain. So I think just keyword searches around that, but I can also share, and even on my LinkedIn profile, there's a whole list of resources on that area. And I think also, the World Economic Forum, even though I don't necessarily like their talk about revolution, is generally got some really good work up there. A lot of good papers, ethics frameworks as well. So that's my shout out.
Yeah, no, that's perfect actually. And I
Oh,
see
one
a lot
more.
of,
Sorry,
yes.
one more. How could I forget this? I'm on the European Blockchain Observatory, and there's a whole bunch of reports there. And the more recent ones are a little bit better.
Perfect. I see a lot of contributions here in the chat, so thank you all for that. And that's a good reminder, I think, Kristen, that you made about just access to capital for women founders. And so if you're working with women founders as an advisor, you're a founder yourself, just as you think about that space, I think blockchain applications like NFTs and also sort of some of these grant arms of foundations and investment arms are great sources for capital for founders as well. And that helps also, I think, reduce some of that access to capital gaps that we know exist. All right. So I think we're going to kind of get into some of the use cases now. It does look like, because this conversation is so rich, that we're going to kind of continue the conversation through the time that we had for this session through 1:15. Really sorry that we're not able to do the breakout sessions, but we hope that we'll have time for Q&A, which should make up for some of that one-on-one time. So I want to go back to you, Shaili, if you could share, your perspective on blockchain and crypto for social impact, and also if there's a couple of use cases that you're particularly excited, we'd love to, hear more.
Yeah, I used to work in it depends on your definition of social impact. I like to think of a lot of my work as social impact, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily focused on emerging markets anymore. It's much more on DAO communities. And I do think this idea of social community kind of goal-oriented DAOs is a really interesting kind of format to achieve social impact goals, because it's different from open source communities. And I think the policy definitely needs to catch up with what can be done with DAOs and things like that. If there's a huge DAO, is the token a security? And if it's not a governance token, the things like that still need clarification from a policy perspective. But I mean, there are some really good climate DAOs out there, which Catherine mentioned. Also, the wealth generation, access to wealth generation from DAOs is very unique, because you're contributing to something that you get something out of immediately, versus having to go through all the steps of becoming this accredited investor. And there are certainly DAOs that will focus on, they're more investment focused and have to have just accredited investors. But I think of it as open source and crowdfunding meets marketing and wealth generation. So like ownership of the inputs and outputs that you get from these communities that you're building, and actively working on. So it's a really, really interesting new model that I hope everyone, tries to like get to know.
Yeah, that's perfect that we were able to touch back on that. And I really like your framing because, I think wealth generation, for underrepresented communities with technology, new emerging technologies is I think a really powerful, use case for social impact. So I think it's really important to pause on that. What about NFTs? You had touched on that briefly. Are they any other, I guess, is there a use case around sort of like raising capital for founders? Anything in there that you'd want to highlight?
Yeah, so I guess for NFTs, there are a lot of women-focused NFTs. I don't know if you read the Washington Post article from this Sunday. There's the World of Women, Women Rise, Women in Weapons. There are a lot of, actually, most of the women-focused NFTs have some sort of social impact angle. So they raise money and some portion of their profits goes to a foundation. And sometimes NFTs, you'll have 100% of it going to a foundation. For example, Consensus worked with MAC, Estee Lauder's brand MAC, the makeup company, and Viva Glam Foundation to do an NFT recently. And I can put the post here just so you get an idea for a really easy user flow into crypto, and 100% of the proceeds. Did you hear me? Sorry, did I accidentally?
Yeah, you were good till just the last part, 100% of the proceeds.
Yeah, I'll put the Viva Glam Keith Haring Mac NFT drop here in the chat so you can see how that worked.
Yeah, those were super, I think, helpful context. And I guess out of curiosity for our audience, like, is it just out of reach for organizations to set up DAOs and NFTs? Are we talking like really expensive capital outlays?
I think these are very separate things. I just wanted to mention something about NFTs, because I think Open Earth Foundation, we just got really lucky when we managed to bag people and for our carbon drop back in March. And because of Christie's auction, we were just had the right strategy and the right timing, and were able to bring in funding for our work. We did another one a couple of months later, and it came in at literally a fraction. But it was a very different business model, very different artist. So I've written actually a piece about NFTs for impact, addressing some of those issues. And I think there's a difference between what we're seeing in the headlines around NFTs and as Shiley said, some of the real use cases that we're seeing and the real impact. And I want to see those elevated. And in terms of DAOs, DAOs are more, they're challenging to set up, but it's not impossible. But I think we are going to be learning as we build for all of this. And I don't know if I'm supposed to mention this, but because the Digital Economist will be working with the Algorand Fund on its governance piece. So I think the governance piece around that of how you will manage this complex ecosystem is really important. And also some of the other unforeseen impacts, like the climate DAO, for example. It's raised new controversy about the price on carbon, the quality of the carbon that's there. So, there are always new risks and new challenges with every new opportunity. So it's, but it's never too late to become involved and to learn more. I'm very fascinated. I want to hear what other people have to say about setting up DAOs, because I think it's really interesting, and even the UNFCCC and its Innovation Hub is considering it. So I open the mic.
So it's, a trend we'll see increasing. So before I come back to you, Catherine, why don't I go to you, Kristen? We'd love to know about any deals you've been involved with female founders, and just or any trends you've seen around Web3 female founders.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think the first thing is maybe a kind of sobering trend. So, latest research reveals only about 5% of crypto entrepreneurs are female. And according to Crunchbase, only about 9% of all funds deployed to tech startups have a founding team that includes at least one woman. So I think it's a powerful, but if painful reminder that there's a lot of opportunity to really be bringing female founders kind of into the fold here. And so, like I mentioned, SDF, the Stellar Development Foundation, invests in individuals and organizations that are building on Stellar, that we feel like are advancing the mission of the foundation as well. There were two really amazing use cases that I wanted to just shine a quick light on. Both of them are by female-founded companies. One of them is a company called Leaf Global, and they have built a digital wallet for refugees who need to carry their money into new countries, or frankly, for anyone who is moving across borders where they're going to be vulnerable to theft if they're taking that in cash, right? And so that Leaf Global has developed a digital wallet. It lets users save their money in multiple currencies. They can benefit from leaf to leaf free cross-border transfers between the two wallets. And then they can also pay for goods and services in their new local host country's currency. So again, we're really focused on that anchor between the fiat and the crypto world and making sure that that feels really seamless. And the functionality there is really only possible because of blockchain and because of these digital wallets that they've created. It helps keep their costs down. It gives you a safe and secure storage of your money when you're moving across these potential borders. And what I think is absolutely the most thrilling piece of this is that you don't need to have a smartphone. Leaf Global has created their wallet with USSD technology. So even basic Nokia, brick phones are able to access all of these services. And that has been tremendous to watch. It's live and in action and has been for a while. Originally developed for Rwanda, but they've been expanding it to other conflict and refugee crises around the world. And then another use case for another female-founded company that we had invested in is called Tala. And Tala is probably best known for its mobile lending app. They use advanced data science in order to enable people to apply for a loan, receive an instant decision with regardless of their credit history. And then if you are approved, you receive your mobile money account in a matter of minutes. But now Tala's partnering with Circle, with Stellar, and with Visa in order to add the capability for that same consumers, these underserved, underbanked customers all around the world, to convert and store and use cryptocurrencies in that digital wallet that they have. By integrating with them, you can store this stable source of money. You have affordable and fast cross-border transactions, and then it's really easy to exchange between digital assets or in and out of digital assets and fiat. And maybe the most exciting part, based on Visa is involved in this, and so Tala is going to enable a Visa card that's linked to the digital wallet, giving the customers a way to spend against their USDC balance at any of the 70 million merchants that accept Visa around the world. So I feel like that seamless movement between I have real cash, now I have crypto, now I have a different digital asset, now I'm back in cash again. That to me is incredibly valuable because it's not only fast and efficient, it's also usually lower cost, because the agents, the correspondent banks, everything that you see that's adding these operational costs are removed from the equation, and now you're just relying on the blockchain. So both of those examples, I think, are really amazing and examples of female-led initiatives that we've been able to support that are doing some amazing stuff with the technology.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, so great. We could get into that. Yeah, and it's really exciting to hear the interoperability of both the blockchains, whether it's USDC, going into Stellar, but also the interoperability of sort of, like you said, credit card ecosystem to, blockchain to sort of digital, just other general digital payments, just seeing all of that kind of converge in ways that are real and applicable to the actual end user. That's really powerful. So I want to bring it back to you, Catherine, before we kind of wind up for the last question. I guess, is there anything else, you'd like to add with your work at the Open Earth Foundation in terms of just innovative work that you've seen around climate?
I think actually what excites me most is sort of the convergence of what we're doing at TDE and Open Earth Foundation. And some of the thought leadership is similar to what Kristen has just touched upon, is integration of the solution. So it's not just, the seamless part of it, but looking forward, the Bank of International Settlements, which is the mother of all central banks, has been doing some great work. And I wrote a chapter for them on programmable money. And this, I think, is going to be the next phase for investment. And this is about digital green bonds and the capacity to not just focus on your usual suspects of energy and transportation and aggregating projects around that for investors or for unique investors. I mean, the way that we're being able to integrate data at that community level, if I took the example of Hive Online and AWAC, which is an association of women in agriculture on the ground in Africa that are using vouchers instead of cash, all of this based on blockchain, and it's sustainable agriculture. And then if we can take those and aggregate the data about the impact, that then can go into programmable money, but also digital green bonds. Similarly, the work we're doing with Goyang City, I can foresee the capacity here to take aggregated data about the impact and turn this into new financial mechanisms, crypto or otherwise. I mean, the uniqueness about this space is that integrative capacity once we reach certain thresholds. And I'll just leave it there because I find that part really, really exciting.
Got it. There's a question here, maybe we'll come back to it at the end, but about your thoughts on carbon tokens. I don't know if you have any quick thought on that.
Oh, it's a long question because I think we have to differentiate between carbon markets and tokens that are traded for offsets and different types of projects and initiatives. So I think that's a conversation, but I'd just be very wary. We just have to be very aware of the credentials, of the certification and verification of any token that's on offering representing carbon. That's what I mean about narrowing the lens about climate. And the other thing is about being able to count that upwards to the national contributions to the Paris Agreement. Being able to account for that, to say that we're making progress on Paris is really essential. And a lot of them are not yet connected into that level. So that's the other part of it. But most of them are supporting great work on the ground, but that's not the be all and end all of the capacity here.
Okay. Great. So we might end up making the last question a little bit of a rapid fire, but just to close out, would love to hear sort of each of your thoughts on sort of what work needs to be done to make the best of this innovation. And I'd love any thoughts on the gender piece, like, getting gender diversity in the design of blockchain solutions. So we'll start with you, Shaili.
Yeah, I mean, there are already actually quite a few women-focused groups in the crypto space, even though founders are only, it seems like 5%. There are many women in this space and it grows by the day, and we're actively recruiting. So come work in the space, leave development like I did 6 years ago almost. You won't regret it. It's super fun. And I think, yeah, just more people working in the space. You don't have to be technical. If you want to be technical, you can definitely take developer training. It's not too late. That's all.
Yeah, so just get involved, jump in, and that percentage versus numbers, there's still a lot of founders and women in blockchain. So that's great to know what you're seeing. All right, we'll go to you, Kristen.
Yeah, I think I would say, in addition to building gender diversity within the industry and having those leaders and those builders, I think it's also important that the technology is targeting and serving and reaching diverse communities as well. And so, for us, I think build a diverse team for sure. Make sure you have those voices at the table, but then also focus on bring that same level of focus to picking out what companies you're investing in. What sort of developers and builders are you bringing into your ecosystem, and what are the use cases that you're supporting, and making sure that, ensuring access, in my mind, is only the first step, right? Once you bring someone in the door, the offerings, the products, the services, they have to actually be practical and bring real value to the users. And so in my mind, I think the biggest next frontier is making all of these different blockchain and crypto applications much more simple and much more user-friendly, because right now quite a few of them are still quite clunky. And if you don't have, if you can't read code, and like, you may feel like, I can't access this. And I feel like that to me is the next frontier, is making these as slick and as easy as all of the other fintech apps, the Venmos and the PayPals that you're using on a daily basis.
Right. Yeah. The transition. Great. So Catherine, what about you? What do you think?
I love what you've said already. To me, this is about the culture of innovation and the approach to the headlines, right? We want to prop up individuals like Elon Musk, the empires, the thinkers. To me, this is about elevating and amplifying the groups, the teams that are behind this, because you scratch the surface of any of the really successful blockchain for impact teams, and the diversity is there. It has to be, because they wouldn't be successful if they're not connected to that legacy knowledge, the legacy frameworks, the depth of experience that is really necessary in this space. So let's just highlight, amplify, and elevate.
Yeah, thank you all so much. This has been such a fun conversation. I feel like we could have been going for another half hour, but in the interest of time, we're kind of a little bit over. Just really appreciate this audience for being engaged. There's been some great links and participation in the chat. Thank you for that. And really thank you to our stellar panel. You guys have put a lot of time into this conversation, and we know that your expertise is really going to benefit and amplify the power of women in blockchain, starting with this community and then outward. So thank you all. Please do provide feedback on the survey. We really appreciate feedback and try to respond with every subsequent quarterly event. And a big thank you to my co-hosts, Camille and Laura, who are the team that makes the dream work for today, and the whole board that's behind the scenes, bringing such amazing events to you guys. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Please do complete the survey. And thank you to the panelists. And we'll see you all soon, hopefully at a blockchain happy hour, not too in the distant future.
Thanks, guys. This is great.
Signing off.
Thank you.